Hello friends, I am Sankalp Pratap, Faculty of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the School of Management and Entrepreneurship at IIT Jodhpur. I would like to narrate my short story titled Happy New Year, which delves into professor-student relationship on a campus. The central character of the story is Professor Girish Swami. Professor Swami is a composite character combining a professor that my father was taught by and a teacher at my school. Professor Girish Swami of St. Teresa's College, Hazaribagh was an honorable and simple man. Staid and sober otherwise, he taught his subject chemistry with a lot of flair. A stickler for punctuality, he kept a tight and predictable schedule with the following highlights. 0500 hours in college gardens, brisk walk. 0630 hours, collect newspaper from Munna Corner Store, read with piping hot tea. 0800 hours, at the local temple, deep meditation. 0900 hours, in the classroom, taking attendance. 1300 hours, unhurried walk to home for lunch, capped off with a 15-minute snooze. 1430 hours, in the staff room, examining student notebooks with unflinching diligence. 1700 hours, at the college library, ensconced with the favorite journals. 1800 hours, with the children of college staff, peons and guards, free tuition. 2000 hours, light dinner, Carnatic music in the background from an old music system. And 2200 hours, in bed, snooze off over a PG Woodhouse omnibus. There were variations to the above schedule, but only on weekends and holidays. On a weekday, the fable goes that the receptionist often corrected the erratic clock of the British Times, matching its hands with Professor Swami's schedule. In the academic block, the only dress one could hope to find Professor Swami in was khadi kurta and pajama, with brown sandals, all bought from the local UP handloom store. Yet, the students fondly called him Rangeen Buddha, the colorful oldie. How on holy earth did someone as prim as Professor Swami land up with this obviously tactless nickname? A stranger to these parts would ask in obvious horror. And any soul on St. Teresa campus or the shopkeepers in Hazaribagh's only market would tell you that young Girish had salt and pepper hair even a quarter of a century back on the day he joined the college as assistant professor in his late 20s after his PhD in chemistry from the Banaras Hindu University. Apparently, he was called Buddha by his classmates at BHU even then. Combine this with his unusual weakness to use chalk pieces of different colors to bring alive his subject on the blackboard, like yellow for an exothermic reaction, blue for one which was hydrous, red for an unstable one, and so on, and you had this epithet which had stuck on and retained its relevance with batch after batch, year after year. In private discussion with his family, Professor Swami would agonize over this nickname, but in public, he would give it the grand ignore. Every single class that he would walk into would have the students rushing back to their seats murmuring, Rankin Buddha has arrived, Rankin Buddha has arrived. But unruffled, Professor Swami would reach to the desk and bring out an array of colored chalk pieces to begin his lecture on time. Everybody respected Professor Swami for his conduct and knowledge. Yet, there was an aspect of his behavior which was widely regarded as quirky and foolish. Professor Swami maintained a hardbound notebook. When last counted a few years back by the carpenter who was called home to mend a drawer of his private cupboard, there were as many as 7 such notebooks neatly stacked. He used these notebooks to maintain records of the monetary loans he would give to the students. Professor Swami was famous on campus for being generous with loans. Every now and then, a student would approach him with a story. The list is endless, but some typical ones were, my father's crop has failed this year and we don't have enough to pay the fees. I want to apply to foreign universities for higher studies, but don't have the funds to pay the application fee. I don't have enough to buy sports shoes for the inter-college athletics meet. St. Teresa's College had a huge campus with narrow roads crisscrossing and connecting its various parts. It was almost a jungle, full of birds of various kinds chirping away to glory. Professor Swami loved the sweet musical performance and often walked from one part of the campus to the other, enjoying this unpredictable symphony. Native memory had taught the students that the best time to catch Professor Swami and share one's predicament was when he was alone on one of these isolated tracks. Upon hearing the student's problem intently, as if it was the very first time he was hearing something like this, Professor Swami would look deeply into the student's eyes and ask him to come over to his residence in the evening at around 9 p.m. When the student would land at his residence in the evening, Professor Swami would already be sitting in his study room with his notebook. Then, the standard ritual of creating a fresh page for the student would be carried out, wherein his or her name, roll number, and residential address would be noted. Professor Swami would also ask and dutifully note down the date by which the student expected to return the loan. At times, and typically at the end of a particular month when the household budget went a little awry, Professor Swami would take out his notebook to review the outstandings and would make small notes in a piece of paper. That afternoon, he would ask the peon to call those students whose due dates had long passed and who had not returned the loan. Usually, the percentage of unreturned loans would be a high 100%. The students would probe in and explain why they required a little more time to return the loan. Professor Swami would mutter, okay, no problem, sounding almost apologetic that he actually asked them to repay and would note down the next promised date of returning the loan. This ritual would go on and the notebooks would keep getting filled. Fellow professors who cared for him found this exasperating and almost an insult to the intelligent professors community. And whenever they found him fiddling with his notebook, they would say, so, another of these pranksters has fooled you? And Professor Swami by rote would defend the student saying, oh no, there was a genuine problem. When at the end of the session, Professor Swami would notice that some students, again in percentage terms not too far from 100%, had left without clearing their dues, he would make an entry on the individual's page, noting graduated, and would prepare to send one last reminder, this time by snail mail at the student's postal address. Must have forgotten in hurry of leaving the campus, Professor Swami would explain to himself as his wife would look at him benevolently. shaking her head in amusement. The year 2018. It was the 99th year of St. Teresa's existence, and alas, it did not have the luster of old. Government funds had become meager, and providing quality education was getting costlier. The college was on the decline, overshadowed by private colleges which did not have the kind of faculty that St. Teresa boasted of, but had the infrastructure, the glamour, and the pomp which attracted students and their parents. The college, in its 100th year, literally wore an old look. The neatly dressed gatekeeper of yore, who welcomed each visitor with a smile, used to look strong and dependable. Today, he was replaced by an outsourced guard whose khaki would be perpetually wrinkled. The academic block, which earlier shone like bright sunshine, today wore a dampened and discolored look. The old watch at the reception counter had given up trying to keep pace with the changing times and now stared blankly at each visitor, motionless in its gloom. Even the desks in the classroom had wizened, their smooth burnished visage replaced by innumerable burrows of today. What had not changed much was Professor Swami, who was now beyond his mid-50s, a few years left for retirement. The gloom notwithstanding, he continued to follow his routine, managing to keep pace with his long walks on the campus pathways, which had now become narrower as the college did not have the funds for the monthly weed cutting exercise. To commemorate the centenary year, the college administration had arranged for an evening of celebration at the campus. To send a general invite to the alumni of the institute, the management first flirted with a small advert in a national daily, but balked at the fat fee of rupees 2 lakhs. It finally compromised with a free insert in the local daily sponsored by the publisher whose children had all studied at the college. This free insert was quite effective. During winter vacations, many old-timers were back in the city in any case, and it did not take them much to trip to their alma mater on 31st of December to usher in the centenary year. The evening was kicked off with a fine speech by the dean, followed by song and dance performance by the residents of the campus, the current students, children of professors and staff, and so on. The list of performances over, the dean came up again, this time to invite all those who wanted to share their experiences at the institute. There was a queue in no time, and you could see that the college had a trunk full of sweet memories. One after the other, professors, old students, family members shared anecdotes of the golden old days, and at the end of every such snippet, one would hear a collective and wishful sigh from the crowd, followed by muted claps. The queue now sneaked forward and threw up on the stage a man of around 45 years of age, well attired in a dark suit and a bright tie. He looked confident and nervous at the same time and started reading from a piece of paper he had carried with himself. Good evening, respected professors, my dear college staff, and fellow students. I am Pranay Sahai, MSc student of the 1990 batch. You will be glad to know that after passing out from the college, I joined hands with a venture capitalist to set up a health tech company which is doing well. There was a year when I was on the verge of going back to my village as I did not have 100 rupees, which was the annual fee in those days. Thankfully, a kind professor bailed me out in time. Today, I have come back to repay the loan, and I would be happy if the college accepts a donation of rupees 1 crore towards improvement of the college infrastructure. Thank you. There was stunned silence. Nobody knew how to react unless somebody in the crowd got up from his seat and erupted, "3 cheers to Rangeen Buddha!" The crowd let it out in chorus. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! The entire campus resonated with the frenzy, and just as people started losing breath and started calming down, the clock struck midnight. Suddenly, it seemed that the entire town had now joined in the celebrations with firecrackers, which lit up the sky, helping the campus escape from the darkness that seemed to engulf it. Before retiring to the bed that night, Professor Swami opened his creaky cupboard and took out his notebooks. His record keeping was meticulous, and in a flash, he was on to the right page, which read Pranay Sahaya at the top and the balance of ₹100 at the bottom. Very slowly, with almost a knowing smile on his face, which was still crimson with embarrassment, he put a neat cross on the figure and, as was his wont, signed next to it and wrote, "Account closed." The next morning, Professor Swami was on his customary trail for the morning walk when a bird let out a loud and shrill hoot. Professor Swami stopped, looked up, trying to locate the bird, but his eyesight seemed to fail him. Still, he raised his hands towards the skies and exclaimed, "Yes, yes, a very happy new year to you too."